Good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday, September 23rd, 8:30. We are here for a webinar to talk about gratitude and the benefits of it and how it helps us to deal with our current circumstances and current situation. Very glad to be speaking to you about this topic tonight. I think it's an extremely important one that in my work in the addictions field is constantly reminding me and us of the importance and the need to speak about and talk and address the issue of gratitude. So thank you, and we'll get started talking about this area and this topic that I think impacts all of us. When we think about it, in times like these, when we are in the midst of everything being different than it was, and it is, and everything changing in a 6-month period, the stress for all of us, no matter who we are in our positions and what we've been through and what we've experienced, can be overwhelming. And we have to find ways to find relief and ways to help us to pay attention to taking care of ourselves so that we can be a presence for other people and connect with other people. It is very important to take a look at that. And if we think back to February, March, most of us had lots of options, lots of choices, places to go, things to do, things to look at, things to change, things to do to take care of ourselves, to go places. For example, myself, I had lots of sporting events to attend and go to. That's not an option and a possibility now. So a lot of us have had strong and significant impacts on our ability to do self-care, on our ability to look at how do I manage life when a lot of what I enjoy doing may not be there. We're constantly bombarded with numbers of cases and numbers of deaths, and we constantly are reminded of the fear of an illness that maybe many of us have lost family members or friends to, or know people who are greatly affected by it. We can't help but notice that we are being asked to wear masks, to wash our hands differently, to do things very different than we used to, as a result and due to the impact of an issue like COVID happening in our time and in our life. We are meant to be social people, connected to others, connected to different groups, interacting with friends and family and loved ones and other people who can be a support with us at work. For many of us, the way of living and connecting to something bigger than ourselves with our workplace and peers and friends and people in recovery and people at our centers that we go to for counseling and help and support. All of those things have been limited by our current situation and circumstances. So we have to look at what might work to help us with some of these difficulties and these challenges and these circumstances that we're all experiencing. Research reports are telling us that more adults now, in the midst of what we're going through, are reporting increases in anxiety and depression. More of us are having issues around thoughts about suicide and harming ourselves. Those people who are in recovery from substance use, many people are now struggling with maintaining that recovery with a more distanced connection to their support groups and their peers in recovery and their friends in the meetings, after the meetings, and all those types of things. Support and health and recovery feels very, very different now compared to what it felt like just a couple months ago. And we are asking ourselves, as we're bombarded with all this negativity and all the fear and all the panic and the struggles and the difficulties, how are we going to get through now to the next day? And then how are we going to get through the next day? Parents, you're now not just being parents like you were. You may have to work and your children are now home and need help with school. You're a teacher, you're daycare, you're all the things that may have been there to support you and your children in a different way are very, very different now. And we have to pay attention to what can we do to help us stay in a more positive and focused spot to be healthy and to take care of our mental health and to take care of our stress, our anxiety, our depression. It's okay to be feeling all those things now. I love the statement that I read recently and just a little while ago on Facebook that said, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. Some of us may be in canoes out in the ocean. Others of us may be on a battleship. We're all in the same storm. We're all experiencing in different ways and different impacts COVID and its impact on our lives. But not all of us have the same boat. Some of us are bailing water more than others. So in thinking about and looking at what can we do to help and support ourselves, to find a way to get through the storm so that we can get to a brighter, different day eventually for ourselves, the idea and the thought of gratitude came to me. Being a substance use disorder counselor for about the past 26 years, I am so used to hearing the term gratitude and have an idea from that what it means and what the importance of it is. It's been a very attractive idea for life and for focus. And, you know, what I think is important for us to take a look at and talk about and think through tonight, and as you watch this, maybe tomorrow or a week from now, some of what we have to pay attention to and look at is, how can gratitude help us? What is it? What is it not? Because it's not a miracle pill. It's not, think about all the good things and everything will be perfectly fine. That's not how gratitude works. It's not how life works. Life is complicated. Life is complex. I don't remember who said this to me, but one of my mentors or supervisors at some point said, all the easy problems have been fixed. We're left with the hard stuff, the difficult stuff, the challenging times and places and things that we have to work through and get through and look at doing differently in life to adjust to. So I thought it's important to take a look at what's there for us in gratitude. How can the practice and the conscious focus and cultivating gratitude in our life on a regular basis, cultivating has to do with taking care of it every day, piece by piece, as you go through your day and your weeks and your months, and look at it. Is gratitude something that impacts emotions and feelings and we all experience it differently? Yes. However, gratitude and the practice of it and the cultivating of it is well researched. There's science behind it. It's not just about a feel-good thing. It's not just about pushing these buttons by saying these things and we feel better. It's about the practice and effort of gratitude and the positive impacts that idea and that thought of having gratitude and experiencing gratitude has on us. Is it going to make us feel entirely better and fix everything? No. But it can reduce our stress, and it has many, many impacts on our life. And there's evidence behind it that it works in changing things and challenging our attitudes. I often remind counselors and clinicians, how often do we ask and tell our clients to write a gratitude list, to think about what they're grateful for today, to think about what went right and what went well today to counteract the negative and what didn't go well, and what didn't work well, and what wasn't positive. How often do we, as professionals, tell people that? And then we have to take a look at ourselves and ask ourselves, when's the last time we did that? When's the last time we looked at that? When's the last time that we made that choice to look at how do we manage and keep ourselves healthy and positive? Because there are a number of pieces and places that if we do several little things, that gratitude will change us and impact us. It has positive impacts on things like physically. Gratitude impacts our immune system. Gratitude limits everyday aches and pains and the impact of them on us. It lowers blood pressure. We sleep longer and feel more refreshed when we go to sleep in a place of having connected to gratitude and gratefulness. We have positive emotions psychologically from it. We feel alert, alive, and more awake when we are able to have gratitude. Now, gratitude does not mean the absence of problems or pain or struggle or hurt. We're going to have all those things. We're going to experience all those things. We're going to live with and deal with all those things. Part of our question tonight is it possible to practice and cultivate gratitude in the midst of the struggles and the fears and the worries about the illness and all the things that changed in times like these? The answer to that is yes. Psychologically, it impacts joy and optimism and happiness to be able to have a gratitude-based focus. It leads us to socially being more helpful and generous and compassionate to other people. We become more forgiving of ourselves and other people when we spend time focused on gratitude. We feel more outgoing and energized. We feel less lonely and isolated. Gratitude is a social emotion. It's not just a feeling that I have. Gratitude is impacted in a social setting. And we don't need to be physically present to be able to show and express gratitude to people who have made a difference in our life and impacted us. Maya Angelou, who is an author many of you may know and may have heard of, had this quote that I think fits so well with understanding and looking at the idea of gratitude. The ship of my life may or may not be sailing on calm and amiable seas. Isn't that certainly speaking to now and what we're experiencing as people? The challenging days of my existence may or may not be bright and promising. Sometimes it's awfully hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when we're stuck in the pit and the hole and the struggle of how do I be all these things? How do I deal with all these things? How do I manage all these things in a healthy, productive way? Stormy or sunny days, glorious or lonely nights, I maintain an attitude of gratitude. If I insist on being pessimistic, there is always tomorrow. Today, I am blessed. What a great quote to kind of get us started in looking at what gratitude is. In her quote, in her writing, she shows that gratitude is not based on things going well. It's not based in, are things perfect? Are things glorious and wonderful and bright? Her quote tells us very clearly that in the midst of great struggles and difficulties, we can be a lighthouse to others and to ourselves by standing in and cultivating a place and a time of gratitude for us to be a part of and be in that place of it. Melody Beatty, who has done an awful lot of writing around the issue of codependency and those types of issues, says that gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, and a stranger into a friend. What a great and wonderful perspective for us to have. Denial to acceptance. We don't have to deny the pain, the suffering, the struggles. We can accept it. And we can accept it better when we come at it from a place of gratitude. What we have into enough and more. It's about peace, being in the moment, looking at the moment in a balanced way. I love that she says gratitude can change chaos to order. So much chaos that we're all living through and experiencing right now. And it brings us from that chaos to a place of having order. So many confusing things are happening now. Gratitude can help us get clarity. Being at home, sheltered in place for a period of time, less travel, less out in places. Not none, but less. Gratitude can turn it from a place of shelter and residence into something comforting and helpful for us. What wonderful thoughts from both of these authors. Different authors, different life experiences like all of us, yet they speak to having gratitude and the importance of it in finding peace and comfort and health in our perspective. So, from an article that was published by Harvard Health, I found a really good definition, I think, of what we're talking about when we say gratitude and what it helps. Sometimes we think gratitude is happiness and just saying everything's great, this is good, and not looking at the negatives. But the reality is, the answer to the question, can you have gratitude and be unhappy or be in distress? Yes, 100%. You can have gratitude and still have your emotions and feelings. Gratitude isn't just be happy. It's a practice. It's an exercise. It's work to get it and experience it. It comes from the Latin gratia. Grace, graciousness, and gratefulness is the core of the term gratitude. Graciousness, gratefulness, that ability to balance the negatives, the struggles, the difficulties with what's good and what happens. We often easily, as people, fall into and struggle with being focused on the negatives. We spend an awful lot of time looking towards the future and looking at, in the future, what could happen, what may happen, what are all the possible outcomes. Too far, too much time in the future, and we are going to feel a great deal of anxiety. Too much time in the past, whether that past was good or not so good. The more we focus our energy and our thoughts on things from the past, the more depression we're going to feel and experience and deal with in life. The place that we have the most power, the most control, the most ability to influence what the past means and what the future may bring is today and in this moment. Gratitude helps us focus on the moment, in the moment, what we're experiencing in the now, and what we have now, not what we don't have, not what we want, but on where we are and where we've come and how we've gotten here. Gratitude brings us to that. That's why it's so effective and helpful. There's research behind it. Dr. Martin Seligman, who is with the University of Pennsylvania, a psychologist, looked at 411 people and looked at different kinds of psychological and positive psychology interventions and looked at different things to do. And they compared 411 people in the study with a control group. They had the control group just write about memories and early memories. When people were asked to write about and personally deliver a letter of gratitude to somebody who they hadn't properly thanked for their kindness, the happiness scores immediately had a huge increase. The impact of doing that, writing a letter, bringing it to and delivering it to somebody that you never properly thanked for their impact on you, had a greater impact than any other form of intervention in the study, with the benefits of writing that letter on the happiness scale lasting more than a month. And it wasn't just that one study. Dr. Emmons at the University of California, along with Dr. Davis and Dr. McCullough, Dr. McCullough's with the University of Miami, they did a lot of research and studies on gratitude. They do a lot of work around that and the issue. They had them write a group about things they were grateful for that occurred during the week. A second group wrote about daily irritations or things that they were not pleased with. And a third group wrote about events that had affected them with no emphasis on positive or negative. They had them do it for 10 weeks. Those who wrote about gratitude during those 10 weeks, more optimistic, felt better than their lives. And surprisingly, to these people in the study, they also exercised more and had fewer visits to physicians than those who focused on sources of aggravation. So we have a choice. Are we going to focus on gratitude, or are we going to focus on our daily aggravations? And I can tell you from personal daily experience, the struggle it is to argue for gratitude in myself versus the things that are annoyances. This is where the idea of discipline and cultivation comes in. Things get stronger with practice. Gardens grow better when we cultivate and take care of them and pull the weeds and focus on the things that are going to help it grow. What we want to do with gratitude is practice it. Use it on a regular basis to help us get to a healthy place. The article from Harvard Health on gratitude gave a really, what I think is a wonderful definition for us of what gratitude is. Gratitude is a thankful appreciation for what an individual receives, whether tangible or intangible. So it doesn't mean it has to be a gift or getting something possessed that you can hold on to and touch. With gratitude, people acknowledge the goodness in their lives. Even in the midst of the worst places, the worst circumstances, the worst difficulties and challenges in life, there is goodness happening in our life. Sometimes it's hard to find, sometimes it's clouded, sometimes it's difficult, but it's there. In the process, people usually recognize that the source of that goodness lies at least partially outside themselves. So gratitude forces us into a space and place where everything's not about us. It gets us out of our self-centeredness to a connection to others outside ourselves. As a result of that, and recognizing that the source of that goodness in our life has something to do with our connections to other people and connections to that outside source. Typically, gratitude leads us to connect to something larger than ourselves as individuals. We connect with other people through gratitude because we recognize what impact they have on our life. We can connect to nature through gratitude and recognize how wonderful it is to be in the place we are, in the space we are. Or it helps us connect to a power greater than ourselves, a higher power. So gratitude impacts all those areas I listed earlier, largely because we are able to move outside ourselves when we take that position and that work and effort of cultivating gratitude. Melody Beatty, again, another quote and statement from her: gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Gratitude can be a part of mindfulness. One of the seminars that's going to be coming up after this one is going to talk about mindfulness in this situation and how it can help. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today. Our struggles, our difficulties are good from our past. Gratitude can help us look at how it got us here. If you're watching this and familiar with the 12 steps, step 12 talks about, as a result of the spiritual awakening that we've had, working this program and working these steps, we gave back to other people. Gratitude helps us make sense of our past. Look at all I've been through and I'm still alive today. All the pain, suffering, all the good things and positive big things that happen, all the not so good things that happen, all of them led to today and helped us become who we are. Recognizing that and choosing what our past is going to mean now helps us be at peace today. And boy, do we need that feeling of peace. If you spend any time on social media, you know how much conflict and disagreements and arguments and attacks are occurring and happening throughout everything today. Boy, do we need peace. How attractive is it that gratitude could bring that peace to us? And by recognizing through gratitude who I am today, I can start to see what tomorrow is going to be and what I could be and what I want to be and what things I want to bring to tomorrow in a positive way, and focus on the good things about myself, the things that are strengths, the things that I have to offer to somebody else out of my own gratitude and experience of somebody else being there and helping me, and people and things, and I am thankful and grateful for, leads me to a different tomorrow in a positive way. Henry Nouwen, who's a spiritual author that I read and I really, really enjoy his writing often, says the discipline of gratitude is the explicit effort to acknowledge that all I am and have is given to me as a gift of love, a gift to be celebrated with joy. Most of us struggle with discipline, partly because we have a negative connotation to it. We don't often think about, look at discipline as a positive. Discipline helps us bring order and feel and experience control over what we can control. We can do things and take actions to influence gratitude, which in turn allows us to be gentler with ourselves and allows us to be gentle with others and to show and experience that gratitude and grace we first received with other people. And then we can impact them. And we all want to have an impact and leave a legacy behind when we're done. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, if you're not familiar with Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was a pastor, a Lutheran pastor in World War II in Germany. People typically know him based off his connection to a assassination attempt against Hitler and him being in prison and becoming a martyr just before the war ended. He spent a good deal of time in prison. And some of what's interesting in his history and story, there's a great book by Metaxas that talks about the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And one of the things that strikes people about him is how positive his writing, his speaking was in the midst of being in prison during World War II. Bonhoeffer could have avoided that. He was brought over to the United States. He could have lived here in safety, instead chose to go back to his country and people and try to make a difference and an impact in a positive way. Think about that life experience, the imprisonment, and all those things that he experienced. And this is one of his quotes. In ordinary life, we hardly realize that we receive a great deal more than we give. And that is only with gratitude that life becomes rich. Gratitude is not about having your ducks in a row. Gratitude is not about even having your ducks in the same pond and everything all together. We receive an awful lot more than we give, and we don't often pay attention to what we get. Life is rich with gratitude. That doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean pain-free. It doesn't mean suffering-free. But what it means is that we become rich and can experience life on a whole different level. So how does it help us overall? From an article from Berkeley on why gratitude is good. It gives two parts and two reasons in gratitude that express why it helps us. It's an affirmation of goodness. We affirm with gratitude that there are good things in the world, gifts and benefits we've received. Hope is born when we can recognize, despite our circumstance, despite our current struggles and difficulties, Despite the world being turned upside down, there are good things in the world. We can choose which voice to listen to. We can focus on one or the other. It doesn't mean denying the negative. It's there, it's real. But we need to balance it by recognizing no matter what is going on and happening, there are good things in the world. There are good things happening. There are positive things happening. The second part of gratitude is figuring out where the goodness comes from. We recognize that the source of that goodness is outside ourselves. It didn't stem from anything we necessarily did ourselves in which we might take pride. We can appreciate positive traits in ourselves, and this is the author, but I think true gratitude involves a humble dependence on others. We acknowledge that other people or higher powers, if you're in a spiritual mindset, gave us many gifts, big and small, to help us achieve the goodness in our lives. We are who we are in interaction with other people and bigger things than ourselves. I've experienced a number of losses over the last several years. Wonderful friend of mine, Bruce Bowen, my dad, my father-in-law, who I was close with, several other people who made great impacts on my life. I realized how important they were then. But I realized that the things and time that they invested in me are still here now. Thanks to them and their choice to put that time into me, I can be who I am as a father. I can be who I am as a husband. I can be who I am as a professor, as a counselor, as a director of a drug and alcohol treatment program. Their impact on me is partly recognizing that without other people who chose to invest in me in some way and see something in me and pull something out of me, I wouldn't be the person I am today. A whole series of good, bad, and ugly things in 47 years of life have got me to where I am. And out of that, I am able to build into and give to other people. So gratitude helps us get outside of ourselves. Eckhart Tolle, who is another spiritual writer, says, when you go deeply into the present, gratitude arises spontaneously. Even if it's just gratitude for breathing. You took your next breath. Something we can recognize every time we take one, in every moment of every day. We're still breathing, means there's hope, means there's good, means that we can do something and be something and make an impact. Gratitude for the aliveness that you feel in your body. Gratitude is there when you acknowledge the aliveness of the present moment. If you are familiar with and a fan of Hamilton the musical, you'll remember in some of the lyrics, look around, how lucky we are to be alive right now. In the midst of what we're going through now, if we stop, pause, breathe, we can recognize how lucky we are to still be alive right now. Being alive means that we have a choice of what we're going to do next and how we're going to do things next. In the midst of the deepest despair, we can recognize and be more than we've been, more than we are, by recognizing that I'm good enough, I matter, I have a voice, and I can be something. And out of gratitude, we can do that. Another Henry Nouwen quote, even though I just noticed my PowerPoint slide says Howen instead of Nouwen. It's Henry Nouwen, Nouwen, says that gratitude as a discipline involves a conscious choice. I can choose to be grateful even when my emotions and feelings are still steeped in hurt and resentment. It is amazing how many occasions present themselves in which I can choose gratitude instead of a complaint. The choice for gratitude rarely comes without some real effort. But each time I make it, the next choice is a little easier, a little freer, a little less self-conscious. We, as people, it's discipline. As we do it, as we practice it, as we find ways, as we're going to talk about in just a minute, to practice it and grow it in our life, the choice starts to become easier. And it starts to become who we are. We start at gratitude instead of starting in the hurt and the resentment and responding from that. It's a choice to practice the discipline of gratitude, and it has to be conscious. That means we have to put effort into it. And I love how real he is. Henry Nouwen is such a practiced spiritual person. To see him say, the choice for gratitude rarely comes without some real effort on our part, is so freeing for us. This is somebody who worked his whole life in the spiritual. And he even says, the choice is hard. It's not easy to choose that place and that attitude of gratitude. Albert Schweitzer, at times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. This is where people invest in us. Sometimes we get tired and exhausted and worn and thin and don't know how we can take the next step, no less the next day. There are times where somebody else comes down into that deep hole with us and says, I'm here with you. And just sits with us. Maybe not even says anything. Or they speak out and say something. Or they live a life that inspires us. And it causes us to reignite that flame in us. And we want to look at those people who are positive influences and positive impacts on us. So how do we foster gratitude as a practice and a discipline? What things can we do to help us with it? How can we practice it regularly? Some people recommend keeping a gratitude journal. Daily practice. Remind yourself of the gifts, grace, benefits, good things you enjoy. Set aside some time. Some people like to start their day out with it. Some people like to end their day with it. Some people like to do both. Start their day and end their day with it. But set aside the time to look at your ordinary, everyday life and look for the gifts, the bouquet of gathered up flowers that somebody's giving to you, the emotional connections, the things where you, maybe in a small thing, recognize the good in what went on today. It helps us to look at a life of gratefulness and recognize and inject ourselves with the good things that we have to help us be able to counteract all the negative that gets thrown in us. If we're not conscious in attempting to recognize gratitude as a behavior, the negative is going to overwhelm us. It's that conscious practice. Things like a journal. Some days it's going to be easy. You can fill up pages some days. Other days it's going to take a lot of work to find one or two things. But to work on that and do that. You know, some of what we have to look at too is recognizing where we came from, where we've been, what we've been through. We've been forged in the fire of life. Making a list, a gratitude list of things we're grateful for, even if it's not journal form and we just make a list. And it's important to write it down, not just make it a thought exercise and think about it. There's power in putting pen to paper, in making that list and focusing on those things around gratitude. Even if you just do it for a week and experiment yourself and see what happens. Do something like the 3 things exercise. It's so easy to get caught up in the things that go wrong and those kinds of things that happen. What we try to do with this idea of the 3 things exercise, and the recommendation is to do it for at least a week, if not longer or more than that. But for each day, for a week, write down 3 things that went well for you today. But not just write it down. It's more than that. We got to get into the details of it. It's not just saying, oh, my coworker made some coffee for me, awesome. It's more than that. Give it a title, whatever you want to do. And in as much detail as you can, write down what happened. Write down what you did, what you said, what others said, what they did. Be as detailed as you can. Be very specific about how the event made you feel at the time. And then, how's it making you feel now as you remember that from today? What caused it? What led to it happening? Write however you want. Don't worry about your grammar. If you like writing poetry and using lots of words, do that. If you're using annotation, write an annotation, whatever works for you. If you find you start focusing on negative feelings, get yourself back to the good event and positive feelings. It's effort, but with practice, it gets easier. This exercise is from an organization called Greater Good in Action, which is about science-based practices for a meaningful life. And it is available at the Berkeley website. If you look up 3 good things, it will take you there to the information on it. It works because you focus on the positive, and it teaches you to notice and experience again the good things that happened in life and the gratitude that came with it. Usually, sometimes maybe you want to draw it. Feel free to do that, but do it for a week and see what difference it makes in how you're feeling and what you're feeling. Pay attention to your language. Look at thinking outside the box. Find things that work for you that show you gratitude. Some people make a gratitude box and put pictures or reminders of things. So when they have a hard time thinking about what's good right now, they can go back to it. I can tell you honestly, I have kept, in 26 years as a counselor, every time I have gotten a note or a picture from somebody who I was able to sit with, and they wrote something or gave me something, I have it in a folder in my office. And when I get stuck and start to wonder, is this even worth it anymore? I pull out those letters. And the people that as a counselor I was called to help me to get my focus back on what a great honor it is to sit with people and talk with people like all of you watching this and whoever's watching this afterwards. And to be a small part of giving you some ideas and some suggestions. Use visual reminders, use pictures, use other things like that. All ways to be more grateful. You can search on the internet and find lots of other options and discussion points around how to be grateful and how to practice it in daily experience. The last quote before we get on our way for the night from Willie Nelson. When I started counting my blessings, my whole life turned around. Pay attention intentionally, consciously, in practice every day, looking for the good things that are going on and happening in your life. Thank you all for being with us. Hopefully you'll be with us for more of these very, very helpful, insightful, thought out sessions about ways to take care of ourselves in this time. My name's Greg Krause. Thank you, and very glad to hopefully have shared this with some of you now and some of you as you watch this recording. Thank you.